She laughed while folding his shirts like she was finally erasing a mistake. Ethan didn't stop her, didn't argue, didn't even ask why. He just watched, like a man memorizing the last scene of a life he had already decided to leave. What Vanessa didn't understand was simple. That silence wasn't surrender, it was timing. The first thing Ethan noticed wasn't the laughter, it was the rhythm, soft, repetitive, almost cheerful, fabric folding. Fabric. He stood in the hallway just outside the bedroom, listening to the quiet, domestic soundtrack of his own removal. Cotton brushing against cotton, the zip of a suitcase opening, a hanger scraping lightly against the closet rod. Vanessa was humming. That was new. She hadn't hummed around him in months. Ethan leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable. From where he stood, he could see the edge of the bed through the half-open door. A navy blue suitcase rested on top of it, his suitcase, the one they used for trips they no longer took. Inside, Vanessa moved with casual precision, not angry, not emotional, efficient. Like she had rehearsed this. "You missed a few shirts in the drawer," she called out, her voice, light, almost amused. "Or do you want me to pack everything for you?" Ethan didn't respond immediately. He pushed himself off the wall and stepped into the doorway. Vanessa stood with her back to him, holding one of his dress shirts, the white one he wore to their anniversary dinner last year. She folded it carefully, smoothing out the wrinkles with her palm. For a moment, something flickered in Ethan's eyes. Not anger, not sadness, recognition. "You're very thorough," he said finally. Vanessa turned surprised, then smiled, not warmly, something sharper. "Well," she shrugged, placing the shirt into the suitcase. "Someone has to be." There it was. That tone. The one that had slowly replaced everything else. Ethan stepped further into the room, his gaze drifting, not randomly but deliberately. The nightstand, the mirror, the corner near the ceiling, the camera, still there, still recording. Vanessa followed his eyes for a split second, then dismissed it. "You're really not going to make this difficult?" she asked, crossing her arms. No yelling, no dramatic speech. Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Would that help?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh my God, Ethan, you're unbelievable." She shook her head, pacing slowly. "Do you know how pathetic this is? I'm literally packing your life into a suitcase and you're standing there like a guest waiting for checkout." He considered that. "Isn't that what I am?" The question hung in the air, too neutral to be defensive, too precise to be accidental. Vanessa's smile faltered for half a second, then came back stronger. "You've been a guest for a long time," she said. "You just didn't realize it." Ethan nodded slowly, as if accepting a fact he had already processed weeks ago. "Maybe," he said. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty, it was loaded. Vanessa turned away, first breaking it. She grabbed another shirt, folding faster now, her movements sharper. "You know," she continued, her voice rising slightly, "I didn't plan for it to happen like this. But honestly, I'm relieved. I don't have to pretend anymore." Ethan walked to the edge of the bed, glancing down at the suitcase. Everything was organized, categorized, reduced. "You've always been good at curating things," he said quietly. She smirked. "It's called having standards." Another pause. Ethan reached down and picked up a tie from the bed, one she hadn't packed yet. He ran his fingers along the fabric, then folded it neatly. Vanessa watched him, confused. There was something off. "You're seriously helping?" she asked. He placed the tie into the suitcase and zipped one compartment halfway. "I don't see a reason to make it harder than it needs to be." That was it. That was the moment. The silent anomaly. Too smooth, too easy. Vanessa's eyes narrowed slightly. "Wow," she said slowly. "I thought you'd at least ask who he is." Ethan looked at her, directly, for the first time. "I know who he is." The room shifted, just slightly. Vanessa blinked once, then laughed again, louder this time. "Of course you do," she waved it off. "You probably stalked my messages or something." "God, Ethan, that's just, I didn't need to." He didn't elaborate, didn't accuse, didn't explain, and somehow that made it worse. Vanessa felt it, a flicker of something she couldn't name. So she did what she always did. She overrode it. "Well, good," she said, grabbing the suitcase handle and pushing it toward him. "Then you know why this is happening." Ethan took the handle. Their fingers didn't touch. "Yeah," he said, "a beat. Then softer I do." Vanessa crossed her arms again, watching him, waiting for something. Anger, hurt, a crack. She got none. Instead, Ethan walked past her, rolling the suitcase toward the door. At the threshold he stopped, not turning around. "Vanessa," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "What?" A pause. Measured. "Make sure you read everything before you sign it next time." She frowned. "What are you talking about?" But Ethan was already moving. Out the door, down the hallway, gone. Vanessa stood there alone in the bedroom, the echo of his words lingering in the air. She scoffed, shook her head. Unbelievable. Then she picked up her phone, scrolling, typing, already moving on. Behind her, in the upper corner of the room, the camera blinked red. Still recording. 3 months earlier. The illusion didn't break all at once. It thinned. Like glass under pressure, still intact, still reflecting something whole, but 1 degree away from fracture. Ethan noticed it on a Tuesday, not because of anything dramatic, but because Vanessa smiled at her phone and didn't share why. It was subtle, almost forgettable. She sat across from him at the kitchen island, her coffee untouched, her fingers gliding across the screen. Then it came, that smile. Soft, private, uninvited. Ethan looked up from his laptop, waited. She didn't say anything, didn't turn the screen toward him, didn't include him. That was new. "You look happy," he said. Vanessa blinked like she had just remembered he was there. "Just something online," she replied quickly, locking her phone and placing it face down, too quickly. Ethan nodded, returned to his screen, but he didn't resume typing. He watched her reflection in the dark edge of his laptop. She picked up her coffee, didn't drink it. Her fingers tapped lightly against the ceramic. Restless, excited, elsewhere. The first financial discrepancy appeared 2 days later. It wasn't large enough to trigger alarm, just unfamiliar. A transfer $3,200. Outgoing, unlabeled. Ethan sat in his home office, the soft hum of Seattle rain brushing against the windows. His monitor displayed their joint account, organized, predictable, stable. Except for that one line. He clicked it. No description, no vendor, just a routing trail that ended in a shell account. He leaned back slowly, not reacting, just registering. Vanessa had always been careless with details, impulsive spending, designer brands, last-minute bookings. But this was different. This was deliberate. He didn't confront her, didn't even mention it. Instead, he opened a second window, started tracing. That night, Vanessa came home late, later than usual. The scent reached him before she did. Not perfume, something unfamiliar, warmer, deeper, male. Ethan stood in the living room, the lights dimmed, the television playing something neither of them were watching. "You're up?" she asked, slipping off her heels. "I couldn't sleep." She nodded, distracted, already checking her phone again. "Work ran late," she added. He didn't ask which part of work required that scent. Instead, he studied the details. Her lipstick slightly faded. Her hair restyled, but not by her. The faint crease in her dress, like she had been sitting close to someone. "You ate?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "With clients." "What kind?" She hesitated. "A fraction too long. Tech," she said finally. Ethan smiled faintly. "I thought your campaign was fashion-based." Vanessa shrugged, walking past him. "We're expanding." "Of course. Expanding, the perfect word. Vague enough to cover anything." The messages started revealing themselves in patterns. Not content. Timing. 11:47 p.m. 12:13 a.m. 1:02 a.m. Always when she thought he was asleep. Always with that same light tapping rhythm. Ethan lay beside her one night, eyes closed, breathing steady, listening, typing. Pause. Typing again, a soft exhale, a suppressed laugh. Then silence, then typing again. He didn't move, didn't turn, but In his mind, he was already reconstructing the conversation, not the words. The intention, the intimacy. A week later, he installed the first camera. Just for security, he said casually, standing on a chair near the living room corner. Vanessa barely looked up from her phone. Paranoid much, she muttered. Break-ins have increased in the area. That's what insurance is for. He adjusted the angle. Precise. Covering the entrance, part of the living room, and the hallway leading to the bedroom. It's not about things he said. It's about knowing. She smirked. That sounds creepy. Ethan stepped down. Only if there's something to hide. Vanessa laughed. Actually laughed. Please, she waved him off. If I were hiding something, you'd be the last to know. There it was. Another crack. Not in the truth. In her perception of it. Ethan held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then nodded. Probably. The documents came 2 weeks after that. Routine on the surface, refinancing paperwork, joint asset restructuring, a new investment account. Ethan placed the folder on the kitchen table, neat organized. Vanessa glanced at it while scrolling. What's this? Just some updates, he said. Tax optimization. Legal suggested it. Do I need to read all that? She sighed. It would help. She flipped through a few pages, barely scanning. Legal language. Dense. Irrelevant to her. Where do I sign? She asked. Ethan pointed. Here. And here. And one more here. She signed without hesitation, without questions, without understanding. Her signature fluid confident final slid across each page like a quiet surrender she didn't recognize. Ethan watched. Not her. The pen, the ink, the moment. Done, she said, pushing the folder back. You handle the rest. I will. He closed it carefully, almost gently. The second camera went into the bedroom. Higher angle, wider frame. Vanessa noticed this one. Seriously, she frowned. In here, it covers the closet and window, Ethan said calmly. Not the bed. That's still weird. You said you wanted more security. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. Just don't turn into one of those surveillance freaks. Ethan smiled faintly. Too faint. I won't. The third discrepancy was larger. $12,500. Same pattern. Same destination. But this time Ethan didn't just trace it. He mirrored it. Documented timestamps, captured account pathways, cross-referenced with Vanessa's schedule, and something else. A name. Lucas Grant. It appeared once, buried in a digital receipt, almost invisible, unless you were looking for it. Ethan stared at the screen for a long time, not shocked, not angry, just confirming. So that's who you are, he whispered. That night, Vanessa stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings. Do I look okay? She asked. Ethan stood behind her, watching her reflection. You look like you've already decided the answer. She smiled. Confident, untouchable, I always do. He nodded. Yes, she did. And that was exactly why she never saw it coming. Behind them, high in the corner, the camera blinked red, recording everything. Not just what they did, but who they were becoming. And more importantly, who was paying attention. The first time Vanessa said Lucas's name out loud, it sounded accidental, like it slipped, like it didn't belong in her life yet. He mentioned something about equity structuring, she said. One evening, pacing slowly across the living room, her phone pressed between shoulder and ear. I told him I don't do anything without legal review. Ethan sat on the couch laptop, open eyes fixed on the screen. But his hands had stopped moving. Lucas. There it was again. Not buried in a receipt this time. Not hidden in metadata. Spoken. Alive. Real. Vanessa turned slightly, catching Ethan in her peripheral vision. She paused, then walked toward the balcony, lowering her voice. I'll call you back, she said, quickly ending the call. When she came back inside, her expression had already shifted. Neutral, composed, curated. Work, Ethan asked. She nodded. Yeah, just a potential partner. He closed his laptop slowly. What kind of partner? Vanessa smiled. Not warmly, Not your kind. Lucas. Grant didn't enter Vanessa's life all at once. He unfolded, strategically, like someone who understood timing as well as he understood leverage. Their first meeting had been at a private networking event downtown, dim lighting, expensive wine, curated conversations. Vanessa had gone there for exposure. Lucas had gone there for acquisition, not companies, people. He noticed her before she noticed him. The way she held eye contact just a second longer than necessary. The way she laughed controlled but suggestive. The way she positioned herself near influence without appearing desperate for it. You don't belong in influencer circles, Lucas told her later that night, handing her a glass of champagne. She raised an eyebrow. And where do I belong? Somewhere with actual power. That was all it took. Not flattery, recognition. Or at least what felt like it. Weeks passed. Then routines changed. Vanessa started dressing differently, not louder, but sharper. Less about attention, more about authority. Her content shifted too. Fewer lifestyle posts, more business insights, more vague captions about growth strategy, evolution. Ethan noticed all of it, not as a husband, as an observer. The timestamps of her uploads, the locations embedded in her photos, the reflections in glass surfaces, small accidental glimpses of environments she didn't mention. He paused one image late at night, zoomed in, a man's watch on the table. Not his, too expensive, too deliberate. Lucas Grant wore a Patek Philippe. Ethan didn't need confirmation, just patterns. The money followed emotion. It always did. Another transfer, $25,000, this time labeled investment contribution. Ethan stared at the screen, then clicked deeper. A newly registered LLC, Vanessa's name attached. Lucas listed as managing partner. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. So you're not just involved, he murmured. You're committed. Vanessa felt it as progress, elevation. She wasn't hiding anymore, not from herself. What started as attention had evolved into validation. What became validation turned into dependency. Lucas didn't just see her, he positioned her. You're thinking too small, he told her one night, sitting across from her in a high-rise restaurant overlooking the city. Brand deals. That's temporary. You need ownership. She leaned forward, eyes lit with something deeper than excitement, belief. And you can help me with that? Lucas smiled. I already am. He slid a document across the table. Clean, professional, irresistible. Vanessa didn't read every line. She didn't need to. She trusted the trajectory, trusted the feeling, trusted him. At home, Ethan printed something. Not the document. A timeline, dates, amounts, locations, names. He pinned it to a board inside his office, hidden behind a panel Vanessa never opened. Each piece connected, not emotionally, structurally, like architecture. Something designed, not random. He stepped back studying it, not with anger, with clarity. The lawyer's office was quiet, minimalist, neutral tones, designed to keep emotion out of the room. Ethan sat across from Daniel Reeves, a man who didn't waste words. You're not here for divorce, Daniel said, flipping through the documents. No, you're here for control. Ethan met his eyes. I'm here for truth. Daniel nodded slowly. Those are rarely separate. He tapped the page. These transfers, if tied to fraudulent activity, can implicate her. Ethan didn't react, but his fingers tightened slightly on the armrest. I'm aware, and you're documenting everything. Yeah, why haven't you confronted her? A pause, measured. Because she hasn't finished revealing herself yet. Daniel studied him, not judging, assessing. You understand, he said carefully, once this crosses into legal territory, you can't control the outcome completely. Ethan nodded. I'm not trying to control everything. Just the direction Ethan stood. Just the truth reaching the right place. Back home, Vanessa was laughing again. Different this time, sharper, more confident. She stood in front of the mirror, phone in hand, recording a video. Sometimes she said to her audience, you outgrow the life you thought you wanted. And that's okay. Growth requires letting go. Ethan watched from the hallway, unseen, unacknowledged, documenting her words, her tone, her certainty. He stepped back quietly, not interrupting, not reacting, just absorbing. Later that night, Vanessa approached him, unexpected. "You've been quiet?" she said, leaning against the doorframe of his office. Ethan looked up. "I've been listening." She smirked. "To what?" He held her gaze. "Everything you're not saying." A flicker, just a flicker, then gone. "You always overthink," she replied. "That's your problem." "Maybe." Vanessa stepped closer, glancing at the closed folder on his desk. "What's that?" "Just paperwork." She didn't ask more, didn't care enough to... That was the shift. Curiosity had been replaced by assumption, and assumption was where she lost visibility. The next morning, Ethan received an email. Subject line, preliminary review. Financial irregularities confirmed. He read it once, then again, then closed the laptop. No smile, no relief. Just a quiet exhale. The kind that comes not from surprise, but from confirmation. In the bedroom, Vanessa was packing for another business trip. Different suitcase this time. Not his, hers. She moved quickly, efficiently, her phone buzzing constantly beside her. Ethan stood at the door, watching. Not the movement, the pattern, the repetition, the inevitability. "You'll be gone long?" he asked. "A few days," she said. "Depends." "On what?" She zipped the suitcase, turned to him. "On how things go?" Ethan nodded. "Of course. How things go." He stepped aside, letting her pass. Their shoulders almost brushed. Almost, but didn't. After she left, the apartment felt larger, quieter, honest. Ethan walked to the living room, looked up. The camera blinked red. Still recording. Always recording. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone, opened a message thread, typed, "She's fully involved now." A pause, then, "Proceed." He hit send. Somewhere across the city, a reply came almost instantly. Understood. Ethan locked his phone, set it down, and for the first time he allowed himself to close his eyes, not in defeat, not in denial, but in acceptance of one simple truth. Vanessa believed she was building a better life. But every choice she made, every signature, every transfer, every lie was laying the foundation of something else entirely. Something she would not be able to walk away from. The night Vanessa decided to end it publicly, she didn't choose privacy. She chose lighting. Warm, flattering, intentional, the kind that softened shadows and sharpened confidence. The living room looked like a set. Every surface clean, every angle curated, even the suitcase. It sat open on the couch like a prop waiting for its cue. Ethan noticed that first. Not the tension, not the shift in tone, the staging. Vanessa stood near the window, adjusting her phone on a tripod. She checked the frame, tilted it slightly, then stepped back into position. Her reflection in the glass looked composed, almost radiant. "You're home early," she said without turning. "I live here," Ethan replied. "For now." There was no hesitation in her voice, no tremor, just certainty. Ethan placed his keys on the table. The sound echoed softly, too small for what the moment carried. Vanessa tapped her screen. Recording. He saw the red dot flicker. Familiar. Recognizable. He didn't ask why. Didn't need to. "You're filming," he said. She smiled, finally turning to face him. "Content," she replied. "People appreciate authenticity." Ethan glanced at the suitcase, at his clothes already folded inside, neatly arranged, categorized, erased. "I didn't know I was part of it." Vanessa laughed. "You're not. You're just... the context." There it was again, language as distance, as reduction. Ethan stepped closer, stopping just short of the couch. His eyes moved, not randomly, but deliberately. The phone, the angle, the reflection in the TV screen behind her. Everything recorded, everything documented, not just by her. Vanessa picked up one of his shirts, grey, worn at the cuffs, and held it up to the camera. Sometimes she began her voice shifting into that curated tone she used online. "You hold on to things longer than you should." She glanced at Ethan. Out of habit, comfort, fear. She folded the shirt slowly, deliberately. Then one day, you realize you've outgrown them. Ethan watched her, not the performance, the intention behind it. Each word wasn't spontaneous, it was constructed. Just like everything else. You could have told me, he said quietly. Vanessa shrugged, placing the shirt into the suitcase. I just did. That wasn't for me. She smiled. No, she agreed. It wasn't. She moved faster now, picking up items, folding, dropping them into the suitcase with increasing rhythm. Confidence building with each motion. You know what your problem is, Ethan? She said, not looking at him. He didn't answer. You're safe, she continued. Predictable. Comfortable in the most boring way possible. She grabbed a jacket, shook it out, folded it with precision. And I stayed, because I thought that was enough. She looked up, finally meeting his eyes. It's not. Ethan held her gaze, steady, unflinching, I figured. Vanessa let out a sharp laugh. Of course you did. You always figure things out after they're already obvious. There was heat in her voice now. Not anger, superiority, the kind that feeds on contrast. I'm not like you, she said, stepping closer. I don't settle. I don't stay in situations that don't serve me. Ethan nodded slowly. That's clear. She circled him slightly, like she was examining something she had already decided to discard. I have options, she added. Real ones. People who actually see my value. Ethan's eyes shifted just slightly. Lucas. The name landed between them, not loud, but heavy. Vanessa froze, for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled, wider than before. So you do know, she said. Good. That makes this easier. She walked back to the suitcase, kneeling slightly to press the clothes down. He's everything you're not, she continued. Ambitious, decisive, powerful. Each word sharpened, measured, intended to cut. And most importantly, she added, glancing over her shoulder, he doesn't hesitate. Ethan considered that. Then asked almost casually about what Vanessa stood. Stepped closer again. About choosing me. Silence, not empty, waited. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then down at the suitcase, then back at her. I hope he knows what he's choosing, he said. Vanessa scoffed. He does. That's why I'm not here explaining myself to you. She picked up her phone, checking the recording. Still going. Still perfect. She angled it slightly to include more of Ethan in the frame. Say something, she teased. Closure moment. Ethan didn't move. Didn't perform. I don't think this needs an audience. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Everything has an audience, Ethan. That's the point. No, he said quietly. That's the illusion. She laughed again, louder this time, mocking, dismissive. God, you're exhausting, she said, always trying to sound deeper than you are. She grabbed the suitcase handle and pushed it toward him. Here, she said, I packed everything, even the things you forgot you owned. The gesture was sharp, final, dominant. You can go now. This was her moment, her false dominance, the stage, the control, the narrative. She stood tall, arms crossed, chin slightly raised, waiting for the reaction she believed she deserved. Anger, begging, collapse, something that would confirm her power. Ethan looked at the suitcase, then at her, then at the phone. The red dot blinked. Recording. He stepped forward, took the handle. Their fingers didn't touch. Of course they didn't. Thank you, he said. Vanessa blinked. Once. Not enough to show, but enough to feel. What? For packing, he clarified. Her expression shifted just slightly, confusion threading through confidence. That's it, she asked. That's your response? Ethan adjusted the suitcase upright. Zipped. One compartment she hadn't fully closed. Smooth. Precise. I don't see a reason to complicate something that's already decided. There it was. The silent anomaly. Too calm. Too aligned. Too easy. Vanessa's smile faltered. Just for a second. Wow, she said slowly. I thought you'd at least fight for it. Ethan met her eyes. I did. A pause. Then, just not like this. She frowned. What does that even mean? But he didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Measured. At the door he stopped. The same place he had paused before. The same line in space. Symbolic. Intentional. Vanessa, he said. She didn't turn this time. What a beat. Then, you should really start reading what you sign. The words landed softer than they should have, which made them heavier. Vanessa's brow tightened. I don't have time for your passive-aggressive. But the door had already opened, closed. Silence. Real silence this time. No performance, no audience, just the faint hum of the city outside. Vanessa stood still, phone still recording, suitcase gone, Ethan gone, control still hers, or so she thought. She walked to the tripod, stopped the recording, watched it back, frame by frame, her voice perfect, her posture strong, her words sharp, and Ethan flat, unreactive, almost detached. She frowned. Why does that feel off? She muttered. She replayed the moment he said thank you, paused it, zoomed in. His face, calm, too calm, not defeated, not even hurt, just resolved. Vanessa shook her head, locking the phone. No, she whispered. I won. She had to believe that. Because the alternative didn't fit the narrative she had already built. Across the room near the ceiling, the camera blinked red. Still recording. Not her performance, but the truth behind it. And somewhere stored far beyond her control, this moment wasn't content, it was evidence. Vanessa picked up a glass of wine, took a slow sip, then another, trying to settle something she couldn't quite name. A small discomfort, a quiet misalignment, a crack, barely visible, but there. She walked to the window looking out over the city lights, bright, endless, full of possibility. This is the beginning, she said softly to herself. Behind her unseen, unacknowledged everything she had just done had already started something else, something irreversible. The apartment Ethan moved into didn't feel temporary. It felt intentional, minimalist, clean, detached from memory. No framed photos, no shared objects, no traces of Vanessa, not even the invisible ones. Just a desk, a couch, a bed, and a wall that faced the city like a blank screen waiting for projection. From the outside, it looked like retreat. From the inside, it was alignment. The first thing he set up wasn't the bed. It was the workstation. 2 monitors, encrypted storage, a secure connection routed through layers Vanessa would never think to question. Not because she wasn't capable, but because she didn't believe he was. That assumption had become her blind spot, and Ethan had learned how to live inside it. On the left, monitor financial records. On the right, time-stamped footage, living room, hallway, bedroom. Every movement Vanessa had dismissed as irrelevant was now part of a pattern, not chaotic, structured, repeatable, predictable. Ethan didn't watch everything. He didn't need to. He skimmed, paused, cross-referenced. He wasn't looking for emotion. He was building sequence. Another transfer came in at 2:14 a.m. $48,000. This time routed through 3 intermediate accounts before landing in the same shell structure. Cleaner, more careful. Lucas was adapting, but not enough. Ethan noted the timestamp, then pulled up the camera feed from that night. Vanessa in the bedroom, phone in hand, typing, waiting, then smiling. The same smile from 3 months ago. Unchanged, consistent, reliable. She still thinks it's working, Ethan said quietly. Not to anyone in the room, but into the silence that now held his thoughts without interruption. Across the city, Vanessa was evolving, faster now, more visible. Her content shifted again, less about growth, more about success. New outfits, new locations, new tone. Confidence had turned into assertion. I stopped apologizing for wanting more, she said, in one video standing on a rooftop bar, the skyline glowing behind her. And everything changed. The comments flooded in. Support, admiration, envy, validation, instant addictive reinforcing. Vanessa read every one of them. Not for connection, for confirmation. Lucas watched differently. He didn't engage with her posts, didn't comment, didn't need to. He controlled access, not attention. You're becoming exactly what I expected, he told her one evening, handing her a glass of wine in his penthouse. Vanessa smiled, stepping closer. "And what's that useful?" The word landed softly, too softly, wrapped in charm, presented as strategy. Vanessa didn't flinch, because she didn't hear the edge, only the implication of value. "And you?" she asked. "What are you becoming?" Lucas smiled. "Bigger." The documents came again. Different this time, more complex, less transparent. Vanessa skimmed them the way she always did, quickly, confidently, without resistance. "Just standard structuring," Lucas said, leaning back. "We're optimizing flow." She nodded. Of course they were. Optimizing, scaling, expanding. Words that meant progress. Words that didn't require scrutiny. "Where do I sign?" she asked. Lucas pointed. She signed, again. Back in his apartment, Ethan received the notification. New filing, new entity. Vanessa's name attached, expanded liability. He opened the document, read it once, then again, then forwarded it. No commentary, no emotion, just movement. The reply came 20 minutes later. "This accelerates exposure." Ethan stared at the message, not surprised, just calculating. He typed back, "Timeline a pause, then weeks, not months." Ethan stood from his desk and walked to the window. The city stretched out beneath him, alive, indifferent, constant. Somewhere out there, Vanessa believed she was building something permanent, something better. He didn't hate her for that, not anymore. What he felt now was distance, clean, precise, final. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small stack of printed pages. Her signatures, each one slightly different. Same name, same confidence, different consequences. He laid them out on the desk, side by side, a timeline of decisions she didn't understand. "You never read anything," he murmured, not as an insult, as a fact. The camera feeds updated again. Live. Vanessa in the apartment, alone. Walking through the living room, the same one where she had packed his suitcase. She paused near the corner, looked up, at the camera. For a moment it felt like she might understand, might question, might connect the dots. Instead she smiled faintly, adjusted her hair, and walked away. Ethan watched that moment twice, then archived it. Label post-separation behavioral pattern. That night, Vanessa hosted a small gathering. Not many people, just enough to be seen. Champagne, music, laughter that carried a little too far. She stood in the center telling a story. Something about finally choosing herself, about leaving what no longer aligned. People nodded, agreed, validated. No one asked about Ethan. He had already been edited out. At one point, someone raised a glass. "To new beginnings," they said. Vanessa smiled, lifted hers. "To better choices." Miles away, Ethan received another alert. Audio spike. Living room feed. He clicked, watched, listened. Not to the words, to the tone, the certainty, the absence of doubt. He muted the sound, because he didn't need to hear it anymore. He already understood it. On his desk, another folder waited. This one labeled differently. Not personal, not financial, legal. Inside, copies of filings, communication logs, transaction mappings, and a document prepared but not yet submitted. He opened it, read the first page, then closed it again. Not yet. Timing mattered, not just truth. His phone buzzed. A new message. "We're ready when you are." Ethan looked at it for a long moment, then typed, "Not yet." A pause. Then, "She needs to finish the pattern." He placed the phone down, walked back to the monitors, watched the feeds, the data, the movement, not obsessively, but with purpose. Because this was never about catching her. It was about letting her reveal everything. Completely. Without interruption. Without resistance. Across the city, Vanessa stood on the balcony of Lucas's penthouse, the wind catching her hair, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. "This feels right," she said softly. Lucas stood behind her, close, but not touching. "It does," he replied. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment settle, letting the illusion solidify. Behind her, unseen, unacknowledged, every step she took forward was tightening something she didn't know existed. Back in his apartment, Ethan finally sat down. Not in front of the monitors, not with the documents, just still. For the first time in weeks. He exhaled slowly, not relief, not satisfaction, just readiness, because the preparation was almost complete. And when it moved, it wouldn't be quiet anymore. The first time Vanessa hesitated, it lasted less than a second. Lucas noticed. He always noticed. They were in his office, top-floor glass walls, the city stretched beneath them like something already owned. The desk between them was spotless, except for a single tablet angled toward her. Just a routing adjustment, Lucas said, tapping the screen. Temporary. It keeps the flow clean. Vanessa leaned in, eyes scanning the numbers. The structure was more complex than before. Layers, redirections, timing gaps that didn't quite align with standard transactions. Why not send it directly, she asked. Lucas smiled, not dismissive, not defensive, controlled. Because direct paths are visible paths. That should have been the moment. The line. But lines rarely look like boundaries when you're standing inside them. They look like progress. Vanessa nodded slowly. Of course. Optimization. Discretion. Scale. Words she had learned to trust more than instinct. And this is legal? She asked almost casually. Lucas didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer instead, lowering his voice just enough to feel intentional. It's protected, he said. Not the same answer, but close enough to feel like one. Vanessa held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then she signed. Across the city, Ethan received the alert before the confirmation email even arrived. The system he had built didn't rely on notifications. It relied on anticipation. When Vanessa's name appeared on the new transaction chain, it didn't surprise him. It aligned. He opened the file, scrolled, paused, then zoomed in on a specific section, time-stamped, cross-referenced, tied to an offshore intermediary that had already been flagged in earlier reports. There it is, he murmured. Not discovery, completion. He didn't sit down. He didn't rush. He walked to the cabinet, opened it, and removed the final folder, the one he hadn't touched until now. Inside everything. Not scattered evidence, not fragmented suspicion. A narrative. Structured, sequential, legally coherent. Every transfer mapped, every signature placed, every moment supported by something that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence. He laid the documents out on the desk, one by one, like placing pieces of a mechanism that had always been meant to lock. His phone buzzed. Daniel. Ethan answered. Is it enough? Daniel asked, no greeting, no build-up. Ethan glanced at the screen, at Vanessa's name, at the transaction. At this point, Ethan said calmly, it's not about enough. A pause. Then what is it about? Ethan looked at the final page, the one that connected her directly, undeniably, to the structure Lucas had built. It's about timing. Back in the penthouse, Vanessa felt it. Not doubt. Momentum. Lucas poured champagne into 2 glasses, handing one to her with a subtle smile. You just crossed the threshold, he said. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds dramatic. It is, he replied. Most people never get this far. Vanessa took a sip. The taste was sharper than usual, or maybe she was just more aware. And now she asked. Lucas leaned against the desk, studying her not as a partner, not even as a lover, as an asset reaching full deployment. Now, he said, you stop thinking like someone who asks questions. Vanessa smiled, not offended, validated. Already did. That night, she posted a photo, black dress, city lights behind her, caption, sometimes the hardest part isn't leaving, it's becoming who you were meant to be after. The comments flooded in. Power move, you glow differently. He upgraded you. Vanessa read them all, not because she needed reassurance, but because she had already decided they were right. Ethan saw the post 20 minutes later, not on his own account, on a mirrored archive. He studied the image, not her expression, the background, reflections in the glass behind her, a faint silhouette. Lucas, positioned just outside the frame, always just outside. Ethan zoomed in, saved it, tagged it. Another piece, not necessary, but useful. The submission happened at 2:37 a.m. No announcement, no ceremony, just a secure upload through a legal channel Daniel had prepared weeks ago. Ethan reviewed the file one last time, every document in place, every timestamp verified, every inconsistency resolved. He didn't hesitate, didn't reread for emotion, only for accuracy. Then he clicked submit. There was no immediate response, no confirmation beyond a quiet system acknowledgement. But Ethan didn't expect one, because this wasn't the kind of action that echoed instantly. It moved differently, through systems, through processes, through people who didn't care about emotion, only evidence. He closed the laptop, sat back, and for the first time in months, there was nothing left to add. Across the city, Vanessa was laughing, louder than usual, freer. She stood in Lucas's living room, glass in hand, music low, but present the night, stretching open in front of her, like something finally claimed. "You were right," she said, turning toward him, "about everything." Lucas watched her, smiled. Not warmly, but approvingly. "I usually am." She stepped closer, close enough to feel like alignment. This is my beginning," she said. Lucas tilted his head slightly. "Is it?" She laughed softly. "Don't ruin the moment." "I'm not," he said. "I'm defining it." Vanessa didn't question that. She didn't question anything anymore, because questioning belonged to the version of her that stayed, that hesitated, that read documents, that asked where money went and why. That version was gone, replaced by someone faster, sharper, certain. Miles away, Ethan stood by his window again. The same view, the same silence, but something had shifted. Not externally, internally. The waiting was over. His phone buzzed. A new message, received. Action initiated. Ethan read it once, then locked the screen. No smile, no visible reaction, just a slow, controlled breath. Because Vanessa believed this was her beginning. And in a way, she was right. Behind her decisions, beneath the confidence, the signatures, the celebration, something had already started moving. Quietly, irreversibly. Not toward success, but toward consequence. And this time, there would be no space left to step back. The music was deliberate. Not loud, never loud enough to lose control of the room, but present, pulsing beneath conversation like a quiet heartbeat. Vanessa stood near the center of her apartment, glass in hand after, slipping easily between sentences she didn't need to finish. Everything felt aligned, curated, complete. The same living room where she once folded Ethan's shirts now held a different kind of narrative, champagne flutes instead of suitcases, admiration instead of silence. And she owned it, or at least she believed she did. To Vanessa, someone said, raising a glass, for knowing exactly when to walk away. The group echoed the sentiment, voices layered, approval amplified. Vanessa smiled, lifting her glass slightly higher than the rest. To better choices, she replied. The phrase landed clean, confident, final. Lucas stood near the window, half in shadow, watching. He wasn't performing. He didn't need to. Control for him had never required visibility. Vanessa glanced at him between conversations, each look carrying something unspoken, confirmation, alignment, something that felt like shared understanding. He gave her a slight nod. Enough. Always just enough. Her phone buzzed. She checked it quickly. More comments, more validation. She typed a short reply, locked the screen, and slipped it back into her hand, like a habit she no longer questioned. "You've built this fast," a guest said beside her. Vanessa turned, smiling. "I didn't build it alone." A glance toward Lucas, subtle, intentional. The guest followed her gaze, nodding with quiet recognition. Still, they added, "You knew when to let go of what wasn't working." Vanessa exhaled softly. "Yes," she said, "I did." The first knock didn't register, not immediately. It blended into the rhythm of the evening, just another sound beneath the music, beneath the laughter. But the second sharper, heavier, it cut through. Vanessa paused mid-sentence, her eyes flicked toward the door. "Are you expecting someone asked?" She shook her head. "No." The third knock came harder, not impatient, authoritative, the kind that doesn't ask. It declares. The room shifted, not dramatically, just enough. Music still playing, conversations still half finished, but attention fractured. Vanessa set her glass down slowly, walked toward the door, each step measured, though she didn't realize she was measuring them. Her hand hovered near the handle. A moment, just a moment, where something felt off, unplaced, uninvited. Then she opened it. 2 officers stood on the other side, uniformed, composed, unmoved by the warmth inside the apartment. "Vanessa Caldwell," one of them asked. Her name sounded different coming from him, less familiar, more formal. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady, though thinner than before. "We need you to step aside. Not a request, a procedure." Vanessa blinked. What is this about?" But they were already moving, not aggressively, not hurried, just certain. They entered the apartment as if the outcome had already been decided. The room fell into silence, not gradual, immediate, like something had been cut. Lucas straightened near the window. For the first time that night, he looked present, fully, not observing, calculating. "Lucas Grant," the second officer said. No hesitation, no uncertainty. Lucas didn't respond right away. His eyes moved across the room, quick controlled, assessing exits that weren't really exits. Then he stepped forward. "That depends," he said smoothly. "Who's asking?" The officer didn't smile. "Federal investigation," he replied. "We have a warrant." The word landed heavier than the knock. Warrant. It didn't belong in this room. Not here, not in this version of the night. Vanessa's pulse spiked. What is going on?" she asked, stepping closer. No one answered her. Not immediately, because the focus had already shifted, away from her, toward him. "Lucas Grant." The officer repeated, pulling out a document. "You are under arrest for financial fraud and money laundering." The words were clear, measured, unavoidable. For a moment, no one moved. The room, once full of motion sound validation, held its breath. Lucas let out a quiet exhale, almost a laugh. "Is this a joke?" he asked. "No," the officer said. 2 more stepped in behind them, positioned, prepared. This wasn't sudden. This was scheduled. Vanessa shook her head, stepping back. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "There has to be—" Her voice cut off, because one of the officers turned to her, not with confusion, not with apology, with recognition. "Ms. Caldwell," he said, her name again. Different now, colder. "You'll also need to come with us for questioning." The words didn't register immediately, not fully, for what she asked. The officer glanced at his file, then back at her. "Your name appears on multiple financial transactions under investigation." The room tilted, not physically, but perceptually. Vanessa blinked, trying to process. "That's not—" "No, I didn't. I just signed—" She stopped, the sentence catching on something she hadn't examined before. "I just signed." Lucas's gaze snapped to her, sharp, not protective, not reassuring, assessing damage. "You're mistaken," Vanessa said quickly, her voice rising. "I didn't know anything about—" "Then you can clarify that, downtown," the officer interrupted. Not harsh, not aggressive, final. The contrast was violent, not in action, in meaning. Just hours ago, she stood in this exact space laughing, toasting, declaring control. Now the same room held silence, tension, eyes that no longer admired but watched, measured, distanced. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." Another stepped away slowly, as if proximity itself had become risk. Phones lowered, glances exchanged, reputation shifting in real time. Vanessa turned to Lucas, this time not for validation, for explanation, for control. "Say something," she demanded softly. "Tell them—" But Lucas wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the officers, calculating again. But this time too late. Hands moved. Procedures followed. Not dramatic, not forceful, but undeniable. Lucas's wrists were secured. The quiet click of metal echoed louder than anything that had happened that night. Vanessa's breath caught. "No," she whispered. "No, this isn't happening." But it was. And worse, it was visible. Public. Witnessed. The officer stepped toward her again. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we need you to come with us." Vanessa didn't move. Couldn't. Because in that moment, everything she believed she controlled collapsed into one realization she couldn't escape. She had never been in control. Her eyes drifted instinctively, irrationally, toward the corner of the room. The camera, still there, still blinking red, still recording. The same room, the same angle, the same space where she once laughed while packing Ethan's life away, declaring him weak, replaceable, finished. Now she stood in that exact place, silent, frozen, exposed. And somewhere, far from the noise, far from the collapse, Ethan stood by his window phone in hand, a single message on the screen. It's happening. He didn't reply, didn't move, just watched the city lights flicker in the distance. Because this moment, the knock, the arrest, the shift, was only the surface. The real truth, the deeper one, had already been set in motion long before tonight. The room where they questioned Vanessa had no windows, neutral walls, neutral lighting, a table designed not for comfort, but for clarity. Everything in it existed for one purpose, to remove illusion. Vanessa sat across from two investigators, her hands folded too tightly in her lap, as if pressure alone could hold her world together. It couldn't. Let's start simple, one of them said, sliding a document across the table. Do you recognize this? Vanessa looked down. Her signature, clean, confident, familiar. Yes, she said quickly. That's mine, but I didn't... What about this one? Another page, another signature, a different date, same certainty. Her breath shortened. I signed documents, yes, but I wasn't involved in anything illegal. I trusted Lucas Grant, the investigator finished. Vanessa nodded. Relief flickered, brief, desperate. Yes, he handled everything. I just participated, the second investigator said calmly. The word landed heavier than accusation. Because it wasn't emotional, it was factual. Hours passed. Or minutes. Time had lost structure. Each document placed in front of her wasn't new. She had seen them before, touched them, signed them, dismissed them. Now they returned not as paperwork but as evidence. You authorized this transfer, one investigator said, tapping a line item. I didn't know what it was, Vanessa insisted. You confirmed it digitally. I trusted him. You verified identity protocols. I didn't read everything, silence. Not judgmental, not sympathetic, just still. The first investigator leaned back slightly, and for the first time his tone shifted. Not harsher, clearer. Ms. Caldwell, he said, this isn't about what you felt. A pause. It's about what you did. The sentence settled into the space between them, heavy, irrefutable. Vanessa's lips parted, but nothing came out. Because for the first time there was no version of the story where she was only a victim. The door opened. A third person entered, not uniformed, not official in the same visible way, but controlled, measured, intentional. A woman, mid-40s. Sharp eyes softened only by precision. She placed a thin folder on the table. Didn't sit. New material, she said simply. The investigators nodded. One of them opened it, flipped through, paused, then turned the folder toward Vanessa. Inside images, time-stamped, her living room, her bedroom, her voice, captured, documented, unedited. Vanessa stared. Recognition hit instantly. The angle, the lighting, the camera, her camera. No, not hers. Her throat tightened. What is this? She whispered. The woman finally spoke again. Supplementary evidence, she said, provided voluntarily. Vanessa's mind raced. Voluntarily? By who? The next page. A transcript. Her voice, I have options, real ones. Another, I don't stay in situations that don't serve me. Another, where do I sign? Her own words, stripped of tone, stripped of context, reduced to intention. This was recorded without my consent, Vanessa said, her voice shaking now. You can't use... It was recorded within a jointly owned residence, the investigator replied calmly. With legal standing. Vanessa blinked. Jointly owned. A memory surfaced Ethan on a chair, adjusting the camera, just for security. Her stomach dropped, not slowly, all at once. No, she whispered. The pieces began to align. Not fully, but enough. The camera, the documents, his silence, his calm. "Who gave you this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The room didn't answer immediately, because it didn't need to. The door opened again. This time he walked in. Ethan. He didn't look different, not dramatically. Same posture, same controlled presence, but something had shifted. Not in appearance, in weight. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was resolved. Vanessa stared at him, disbelief first, then recognition, then something deeper, something closer to fear. "You," her voice cracked, "you did this." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He stepped forward just enough to be seen clearly, not close enough to comfort. "Never that again." "I provided what was asked," he said. His tone wasn't cold. It was finished. Vanessa shook her head. "No, you set this up. You've been watching," he offered. A pause. Yes. No denial, no defense, just truth. Her breath became uneven. "You let me..." She struggled for words. "You let me sign everything. You didn't stop me." Ethan held her gaze. "Steady. You didn't want to be stopped." The sentence cut deeper than accusation, because it was accurate. "I didn't know she insisted. I trusted him. And you ignored everything else," Ethan replied quietly. A beat. The transfers, the structure, the risk. I know what you thought." Another pause. Measured. "You thought you were choosing better." Vanessa's eyes filled, not with guilt, not yet, with the collapse of certainty. "You could have told me," she said, almost pleading now. "You could have said something, anything." Ethan's expression didn't change. "I did." Her brow furrowed, confusion cutting through panic. "When?" Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Make sure you read everything before you sign it next time." The room went still, because the sentence, the one she dismissed, the one she laughed at, had returned, not as a warning, as a verdict. Vanessa's shoulders dropped, not dramatically, quietly, like something inside her had finally given way. "I thought you were weak," she whispered. Ethan nodded once. "I know." Silence followed, not empty, complete. The investigator closed the folder. "Ms. Caldwell," he said, "based on the evidence, you will be formally charged pending further review. You will have legal representation," but Vanessa didn't hear the rest, because her focus had narrowed. Not to the room, not to the consequences, to him. "You planned this," she said softly. "Not accusing, understanding." Too late. Ethan considered that, then answered carefully. "I paid attention." A pause. "You made the rest inevitable." Her lips trembled. I lost everything she said. The sentence wasn't dramatic. It was factual. Career. Reputation. Freedom, possibly. And him. Especially him. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just distance. "You traded it," he said. The words didn't rise. They settled. Heavy. Permanent. Vanessa closed her eyes. And for the first time she saw it clearly. Not the moment she chose Lucas. Not the night she packed the suitcase. But the pattern. The arrogance. The certainty that she was always one step ahead when, in reality, she had been walking exactly where the path allowed. The chair scraped softly as she was asked to stand. Procedures resumed. Movement returned. But something fundamental had already ended. Ethan stepped back. Not part of it anymore. Not responsible for what came next. Because his role was finished. As Vanessa was led toward the door, she paused. Just for a second. Turned back. "Was any of it real?" she asked. The question was small, fragile, stripped of everything else. Ethan didn't hesitate. Yes. A beat. Until it wasn't. She nodded slowly, as if that answer more than anything else would stay with her. Then she was gone. The room emptied. Silence returned. But this time it didn't carry tension. It carried closure. Ethan walked out of the building into the open air. The city moved around him, unchanged, indifferent, alive. He took a breath. Deep, unrestricted. No anger, no weight, no need to look back. Because the truth had done what it always does not. Loudly, not instantly, but completely. Somewhere behind him, doors closed. Processes began. Consequences unfolded. Irreversible. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan wasn't observing anymore. He was free.